Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I think I have to turn this mic off to turn the one that I have on my hip on, right? Okay. It's good? All right, I'm going to be not too long because everyone's tired. It's been a long day. But I am really honored to be here at Glenville. So I thank the staff and administration for inviting me and all the parents and students who have come out. It's important that we support our students. This is very important, and we want to make sure that not only do we spread the word, that we continue to grow as a community so that we can encourage our youth. So I just want to make that statement. The theme tonight is the impossible dream comes true. And you know, I had to do my research, and it's come to my attention that 46 years ago, Martin Luther King actually spoke on this stage in this high school. So there's rich history here, and I'm honored to be asked to come and address such a distinguished group of people. And why do I say that? I say that because you've given your time this evening to actually come here and to honor these students who have dreams, to actually support your community. So that's very important. So I stand here on the shoulders of those who were here before. And plus I hear that there are so many great people who graduated from Glenville. So that's another honor, even though I went to the other black and red school down the street. It's great to be here in Glenville. I did take a minute to listen to the speech that Martin Luther King delivered here at Glenville High School. And it's a couple of things that I want to mention. We may have that speech played, but one of the things he focused on was the urgent need for freedom as well as human dignity. He spoke about the need for African Americans, or as the term was used often then, the Negro to get free. And then he also spoke about how in order to gain that freedom, it's not by explosives or bombs, but by nonviolence. So basically, I submit to you that today, 46 years later, we still have urgency. There's still a need, but there's a different need. And I see this every day in my court. The major issues and the major needs that we have today as African Americans is the need to achieve legacy building success. And what I mean by that, the type of success that will encourage the generations coming up after us. So for those parents and administrators who are in the audience, it's important for us to do that now. For those young people who are ninth graders and above, ready to graduate, it's important to start thinking about that. Not just being successful, but how to build a legacy. I have my wife and daughter here with me, and I'll tell you that everything I do now as a judge in East Cleveland, I try to think about the legacy that I'm leaving for my daughter. I try to think about how will she remember her father, Judge Dawson. And I try to think about the things that she will be able to learn from me as she's growing up. So I encourage you, and that's really what I'm going to talk about, legacy building success. And then there's the number two thing that's important, and that is being a cycle breaker. It was interesting, I didn't know that the mantra that I have was going to be read, but if you come into East Cleveland's court, you'll see where I have defined what it means to be a cycle breaker. And basically, a cycle breaker is anyone who recognizes that the cycles that have happened in our community, the negativity, the hopelessness, being in and out of jail, dropping out of school, teenage pregnancy, all of those things, we need to make a concerted effort to break those cycles. Because in order for our community to grow, in order for us to be successful, we have to make an effort and a focus to break the cycles. So that's what we do in the East Cleveland Court. That's what my mission is. And I tell people every day, whether I'm the judge for just 1 term or 10 terms, it doesn't matter. But every day that I hit that bench, my goal is going to be a cycle breaker, to do what I can to make sure that anybody who comes in East Cleveland's court is going to leave with some type of motivation, some type of inspiration or information on how to better their lives. And that's what I've been doing. So tonight, that's what I want to talk to you about. And, you know, I would normally start by giving you the statistics of domestic violence that goes on in our court and the assault cases that come through East Cleveland. But I'll tell you, I'm not going to give you the numbers, but I'll tell you, I see it every day. Every day I see people younger and younger committing domestic violence, getting caught up in assaults. And that's an easy thing because basically fighting is where the assaults occur. Then I see drunk driving and things like that. And I'll tell you, even when I come to speak in schools, And for those of you who know me here, I do a program here at the school called Finish First. We've been doing it for quite a while, at least 4 years. We do it every Friday. And now I have a magistrate who does it with me, so I may not be here every single Friday, but that is legacy. Even in that small bit, the fact that I was able to start a program here in Glenville, I also do it at Shaw, and that program is living on even beyond me. But at that program, I talk about every day about all these statistics that come through my courtroom, all of these people who are caught up in negative cycles. So that's what I'm aiming to do. That's why I'm here. That's why I don't mind giving my time, because we have to be cycle breakers. So I'm going to give you 5 principles on how to achieve that legacy building success, as well as how to be cycle breakers. So what I want to do is I want to start with a story, because that's one thing I'm starting to get. By being a judge, one thing I find is that I'm getting story after story, example after example of people who just keep getting in trouble. And you know, it's to no fault of their own, but this story is very important. So there's this young man, he's from a single parent home. He has an older sibling. His mother is raising him as a single parent because the father left, and we see that in our community so often. And mom is doing the best thing that she can do. She works every day, she works hard, trying to raise this young man and trying to teach him the right things. So the young boy goes through school, and luckily in elementary and junior high school, he's focused. He's getting good grades, he's doing the right thing, he's staying out of trouble. But then what happens is he hits that high school stage. And oftentimes, like we all do in high school, it's a whole different experience. We start feeling a little different about ourselves. We start getting involved and getting exposed to environments that we didn't know about. And this young man, unfortunately, somehow got attracted to the drug game. And he started selling a little weed and doing little things like that on the side, stuff that he knew he shouldn't have done. And mom didn't know anything about it. But what's interesting, like I said, he had an older sibling, and that was kind of his inspiration. You know, he didn't really want to embarrass his family. But at the same time, the environment that he was in was pulling him toward this negative activity. And I'm going to talk about that because that's what happens so many times. Our environment pulls us toward the negative activity. Now, in school, it's funny because the young man was doing double duty. You know, on one hand, he was very smart. He was involved in extracurricular activities. And on the other hand, he was doing all these little side things that he knew he shouldn't have been doing, but he kept on doing it. So, during his time in this area of dealing with drugs and learning that whole little business, the young boy was robbed at gunpoint. There was another time where he was almost caught in drug raids, and we know what can happen there. Once you get a number in this system, it's over. And then also there was a time when he was running from the police or something like that and had to swallow some of his stuff and got sick. So these are the experiences of this young man. Now, if you think about it, we all know now sitting here, and we have the most intelligent students. They all have wonderful dreams. We all know that those things are wrong. And normally, those situations end in one or two ways. You hear it all the time. You hear it from the DARE program. You hear it from the Just Say No program. You always hear that when you deal in drugs, you're going to either end up dead or in jail. But for some reason, this young man didn't end up in either one of those positions. In fact, kind of like your theme, he was an impossible dream that came true. What happened was he went on to graduate from high school, luckily, changed his life around, went to college, got really focused. He decided to go to school after college, so a little bit of a graduate school. So, you know, this young man turned it all the way around. Eventually, he became a lawyer, and now he's standing right here as judge of East Cleveland's court. So when I tell you that I've experienced all the things that you've experienced, when I tell you that I've been through the things that you've been through, when I tell you that I've endured the temptations of negativity, I've lived it. And luckily, I've become a cycle breaker because now my story is a testimony to let you know that you can overcome those problems, but more importantly, you don't even have to do it because I can be a living example of the fact that it's negative and normally you don't survive it. So that's an interesting story. And then I have to tell you, so what changed my life? What put me on a new path? And I'll submit to you that I determined my purpose in life. And I did that very early. My purpose, it was very simple, because oftentimes we think about, this purpose, what do I want to be? And a lot of young people get caught up in that because you don't know. You don't know exactly what you want to do. But I knew one thing I wanted to do. I wanted to be great. I wanted to be great at something. I wanted to be a person of stature. I wanted to be someone who can inspire other people. And I wanted to maximize my moments. So those two little things right there, to be great and to maximize my moments, those are the things that changed my life. Because I realized that, hey, going down this path of hanging with the wrong people, being in the wrong environment, being caught up in dealing and experimenting with drugs and all that stuff was just a dead-end street. And I realized it. And I'll tell you, now that I've told you who that person was, the person that was my brother, whom I didn't want to embarrass, some of you may know, my brother works for Fox 8 News. He's the anchor, Wayne Dawson. He does the morning show. So luckily, as a youth, I always had him in the back of my mind saying, wow, if I get caught doing all this crazy stuff, my brother's going to have to report me on television. The news story will be, Wayne Dawson's brother is arrested for selling drugs. And I said, I couldn't do that to my brother. I couldn't do it to my mother, because she struggled so hard as a single mother. And that was always playing in the back of my head as to why I need to change my behavior. So, and I'll submit to you this. I often talk and I often think about, for our young people today, not everyone has that luxury. I mean, think about it. It's very rare that you have a brother who's on television, so that keeps you from doing the wrong thing. So I tell you, it doesn't even take that. All it takes is for us as young people, for you to open your eyes and even look around this room. The adults that are here, that cared enough to stay after being in school all day, the adults who come out, the adults who put in months and months of planning, your coaches, your leaders for the drama team, these individuals care about you. So I'll tell you, if you don't think anyone else cares about you, you can look around the room and you will see at least a few people who do care. And I tell you that you should shape your attitude to say, I don't want to let them down. I don't want to let the people in my school down who give me their time, who give me their ear, who's willing to listen to me. So if you don't have a Wayne Dawson to look up to, that's fine. It doesn't even matter. Look around this room and determine not to let these people down. That's what I tell you about that. So I had to figure out my basic purpose. And here's where we're going to go into what I want to talk about and what I want to leave you with, my 5 principles. So to reach your potential, you have to grow. And to grow as individuals, it takes an intentional mindset. So here's what I mean by that. There's this deep talk about the power of intention and how when you were born, when you're in your mother's stomach, you're going to grow. You're going to become the young person that you were meant to be. But at some point, it takes you to decide that you want to grow further beyond your environment. Because naturally you're going to grow arms, you're going to grow legs, and you'll start to walk and talk. But that growth that goes beyond high school, that growth that goes beyond the community that we have, the negativity that we deal in, the ability to become a cycle breaker, that requires you to say, I want to do something different. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to drop out of school. That takes intention from you. So I'll tell you, this is what you have to do it. First of all, the number one principle is you have to keep it moving. And when you get knocked down, you cannot stay down. When you get disappointed, when things happen in your life, make sure you get back up. Because I'm telling you, it's never over when you're down, unless you stay down. And think about it, nobody ever stays down, even in a fight. You gotta get up, even if it's 5-10 minutes later, even if somebody knocks you out, eventually you're gonna get up, as long as you're still living. So keep that in mind. Every storm passes. And that reminds me of this little story I heard. There was a young boy who was outside playing, and he saw this cocoon. It fell to the ground, and he's sitting there, and he has nothing to do. So he's watching it, and he's watching the caterpillar struggle to get out of the cocoon. Struggling. So this little boy said, man, what should I do? I need to help this. Caterpillar, I want to help it live and grow. So he runs in the house, he gets some scissors, and he comes back out, and he says, I'm going to help it. So he cuts the cocoon to let the butterfly, or let the caterpillar out. And what do you think happens? Very shortly after that, the caterpillar dies. It dies. Because it was not ready to be the butterfly yet. And the reason I bring you that story is because that caterpillar, that struggle that it was going through, that tough time that it was going through, that storm that the little boy was watching, it had to go on. In order for that caterpillar to develop into the butterfly that it was supposed to be, it had to go through that struggle. So that goes back to my first principle. When you get knocked down, when you get discouraged, you are supposed to go through those experiences because that will give you your testimony. That will give you your ability to talk to young people and to talk to people around you about how to overcome. So my point is, if you keep your eye on the prize, when you get knocked down, you just get back up and you keep on going. So that's principle number one. Keep it moving. When you get knocked down, just don't stay down. Number two, get up, get out, and do something. And basically, what I mean by that is, we can't be lazy. You know, and I'll tell you, the young people that we have here today are wonderful. I sat there so proud at everyone who performed, everyone who walked on this stage, because most of our young people right now are suffering from this internal laziness. We come to school, you're disengaged, you don't want to listen, you don't perform, and I'm just hopeful, and I believe it's true that every young person in this room doesn't act like that, and you're not influenced by that. Because our culture right now, it's more important to be cool than to be smart. It's more important to make sure that you have your pants at the right sag level. I mean, just right at the right sag level where you can walk and it don't fall down, but you still got your butt showing. The right level. It's more important to do that than to be smart in school. So I tell you, make sure you get up, you get out, you do something. You go to school. You set your goals. You get up every day. You continue to be an athlete. You continue to be in the drama program. You continue to practice speaking so that you can present yourselves well. You know, there's a memory I have of my brother, and I wish I had it on video, but I used to walk past my brother in the bathroom, and Wayne Dawson would be in the mirror speaking. I mean, and look at it. He's been on television 20 plus years, and he's great at it. But it took practice. He got up, he got out, and he did something. He would get in that mirror and just practice reading. So I submit to you that the more you do that, the better you will be, and that's how you will have that legacy building success and become cycle breakers. So get up, get out, and do something. Number three, you have to change your environment. And there's a couple of ways that I mean that. First of all, your physical environment. Now, not all of us are able to go to Paris and things like that, but you can make little changes in your physical environment, meaning go to the bookstore every now and then. Go to the library, pick up a book, pick up a magazine, and take your mind beyond where you are. That was something that I loved to do growing up in East Cleveland. I loved to go to bookstores and just dream. You know, I love to look at GQ magazine and say, wow, look at these folks. You know, look at this picture, because that kind of stretched my imagination. You have to get out of your environment. I'm not sure if you're aware, but up on Cedar, there's a new restaurant. It's called Piata or something like that. And it's near the Five Guys. It's in a new plaza. If you ever get a chance, go up there and check it out. This is not a commercial for it, but check it out. So I'm up there, and I'm looking at the menu, and it has a history of the store. And it says that this guy who started this business, he used to be in business before in a restaurant, he sold it, but then he had enough money, and he went to Paris on a vacation, and he looked around and he was inspired by what he saw and said, you know what, I'm going to go back to Cleveland, Ohio and open up this business that's going to be based on what I saw in Paris. And now it's a very successful, it's kind of an Italian Chipotle, if you're familiar with that. And my point is, just by changing his environment, he was able to expand his mind. Now, we can't go to Paris. I've never been to Paris. I don't know if you can afford to go to Paris, but you can still expand your mind just by thinking outside the box. So a change in environment can be physical, but at the same time, it can be my number two one, which is mental. Change your environment mentally. Just because we are from the hood doesn't mean we have to keep our minds in the hood. So continue to think on a higher level. Continue to think about being in the medical field. Continue to think about being an actress. Continue to think about being a scientist. Those are things that are important to your life, because as you continue to expand your environment, you will reach success. So changing your environment is very important. Number four, make sure you value yourself. That's very important. You know, they say that we all make our own breaks based on the choices that we've made. So wherever you are right now as a senior is based on the choices you made as a junior, as a sophomore, as a freshman. So keep in mind, you have the power, and it starts with you valuing yourself. Now, it's interesting. We all are born to be great. And I'll tell you, no matter where you are, no matter what you think, you are born with greatness in you. Unfortunately, sometimes we just don't tap into it. I like to use a very small example when I'm in court. I say, you know what, if nothing else, young brother, young sister, if nothing else, we have this innate power to kind of understand our environment, unlike anybody else. So you take the same kids, you put them in a different neighborhood that doesn't have the crime that our neighborhoods have. They may hear a police car, they hear a siren, and they say, whoa, what's that? They even look. But you take the young people from our neighborhood, they're walking down the street, they hear a police car, they hear a siren, and they're cutting out running. Why? Because we have this unique ability to predict some things that are happening. Now that's a facetious or kind of a joking example, but it just shows you that we're able to develop our talents in whichever way we want to. Whether it's in learning our environment, learning how to adjust, learning how to live in our environment, or if it's just changing your attitudes, changing what you want to do. So I say when you value yourself and you acknowledge that you have greatness in you, even if it's small, you have greatness in you. That's important. And most importantly, not only do you have greatness in you, but you are born to be great. I mean, if you think about it, the fact that birth takes place, I mean, it really literally is a miracle. Luckily, like I said, I have a daughter. And when you think of that process, it's just a miracle. So why else would you be here if you weren't born to be great? So don't let anybody tell you that you're not great. Value yourself. That's very important. Focusing on the things that you can change and leaving alone the things that you can't. That's putting value on yourself. So when you focus on, okay, I can do well in school. If I study hard, I'll get an A. That's what you focus on. Don't focus so much right now on, down the street, somebody's, arguing and fighting, or they're shooting and stabbing down the street. Because in my environment, in my world, I'm going to focus on being successful. So value yourself. And then number 5 is value your time. That's very important. There's a book that's called The Outliers. And I talk about these books and things, and this is another sad statistic. The statistics say that when you graduate from high school, only 46% of you will ever pick up a book again. That's really ridiculous. I want you all to break that cycle, please. Continue to read, continue to grow, continue to learn. But there's this book that talks about, it's called An Outlier, and it has this 10,000 hour rule. And what it means is, in order to be great at anything, this guy got it down to a science. He said it takes 10,000 hours. That's approximately 20 hours a week for 10 years of practice. So when you break it down like that, it's not that hard. So let me give you some examples of greatness, of people who actually practice like that, 20 hours a week for 10 years or 10,000 hours. Michael Jackson. That's an example of one. If you ever read his story, you'll know that he just practiced all the time. He'd dance in the mirror. He'd sing songs. And think about it. He'd been singing and dancing since he was 4 or 5 years old. Definitely 10,000 hours. Bill Gates and his intelligence and the way that he approached the computer, more than 10,000 hours. I can even use me. I was one of the best drummers that ever came out of Shaw High School, unless if you listen to me and let me tell you. And I practiced all the time. I was part of the Shaw Band. I know you've all heard the Shaw Band. And the only way you get great is by practicing. I mentioned before how my brother would practice reading. Think about your own sports here. Think about the Glenville football team that is absolutely amazing. How many hours do you see them out there practicing? I mean, it takes hard work. So my point with that is you have to put in the hours to be great, and it starts by you valuing your time. So make sure you do that. Now, one thing I want to mention before I get into my last little piece is this is all the time you get. Obviously, we know we have 24 hours in a day. In a week, you have 168 hours. In a month, you have 730 hours. In a year, you have 8,765 hours. In 4 years, when you graduate from high school, after you make it through, you've spent 35,000 hours of your life. And if you live to be 70, you have about 613,000 hours. So when you break it down by hours, that's not a whole lot of time. So the question is, what are you going to do with your time so that you build a legacy meaning that your name will ring on after you're gone and that you will improve your community? And what are you going to do to be a cycle breaker so that you encourage people to break those cycles? So I submit to you that we have to use the time that we have wisely. So before I get to my last point, to recap, we're talking about number one, keep it moving. When you get knocked down, don't stay down. Number two, get up, get out, do something. Number three, change your environment. It's important mentally and physically. Number four, value yourself. And number five, value your time. Now, here's a last story because this is important too, because after you do all of that stuff, there's a couple of things you have to do in order to achieve your greatness. Now, I don't know if you heard this story, but back in the day, young people, there was this big thing about searching for gold. And in fact, it was before I was born too, so there was this big gold rush. It was on the West Coast. And there was this one man named R.U. Darby, and his goal was simply to be rich. So he found out about all the gold on the West Coast, so he moved out to the West Coast and said, you know what, I'm going to buy me some equipment, and I'm going to start digging for gold. And he did just that. So he dug and he dug and he dug, and he found gold. And he said, wow, I've done it. I've hit it rich. So what he did was, because he realized he needed some equipment now that he found it, he went all the way back to the West Coast. But first, of course, he covered up his gold because he didn't want anybody to find his area. Went back to the East Coast, got some investors, got some guys to say, okay, you know what, we'll give you some money. We'll invest in your dream. So they went all the way back to the West Coast. He uncovered this. He had thousands of dollars worth of equipment, and he started digging again, digging for that gold. But this time, it stopped producing gold. So he's sitting there like, wow, you know, I had these investors come out here, I had all this money spent, and now I can't find any more gold. So he got discouraged. You know, remember my first thing I said, when you get down, don't stay down? He got discouraged. So what he did was he took all his equipment and found somebody and said, you know what, you can buy all this equipment, I'm done. I'm gonna go back over to the East Coast. I don't need this, I tried, I got a little bit of gold, it's no big deal. And the person he sold it to was a junk man who bought all types of stuff. But what he didn't realize was this junk man had a purpose. Because remember in the beginning I told you the only way I changed my life is because I had a purpose. This junk man's purpose was to get into the gold business. So what did he do? When he was younger, he changed his environment, he changed his mind, he started researching all about gold. He learned everything he could about gold mining, about finding gold, about cultivating it. The only problem was he was like you and I. He didn't have a lot of money to buy the equipment. But then lo and behold, here comes this guy selling all this equipment for cheap. So he bought the equipment, got his friends together. What do you think happened? He found the gold. But let me tell you how he found it. Because through his research, he found out there's something called the fault line. And what that means is basically, sometimes with gold, instead of going straight down, it kind of goes horizontal. So R.U. Darby, who was digging straight down, didn't realize that. He hit the point where he couldn't find any more gold. But the junk man knew, okay, let me move over a little bit, 3 feet, and I'm gonna find some more gold. And he did, and he struck it rich. So R.U. Darby was 3 feet away from gold, and what did he do? He quit. When it got hard, he quit. So that's the interesting part of the story, because the one guy got rich. So what did Darby do? He went back home, but I'll tell you this, the good part is that he didn't get down, he didn't kill himself, he didn't do any of that. But what he did was he learned from his mistake, and he developed an attitude. He said, you know what, I'm never quitting again. I'm never gonna be 3 feet from the goal and stop trying, stop putting forth the effort. So he didn't stop. Instead, he started an insurance business and he became great. So what does all that mean? Again, you have to put in the work, because every success, every goal requires work. And keep in mind, when you say, you know what, one day I'm gonna do this, or someday I'm gonna do that, someday is really not a day at all. You got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Someday is not a day. So you have to really be intentional about success. And then you have to get focused. Make the rest of your life the best of your life. And what I mean by that is, don't let all these distractions get to you. Remember changing your environment. Get up, get out, and do something. Stay focused on your goals. If your goal is to be a scientist, to be an actress, if your goal is to be in the medical field, stay focused on it so that you can achieve it. And then the last thing, never ever quit. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how few people are listening to you, no matter how many times you hear, oh, you're from Glenville, that doesn't mean anything. Think about it. I'm the first judge in East Cleveland that actually grew up in East Cleveland. So I'm sure that people from East Cleveland probably say, you know what, nobody from East Cleveland will ever be a judge. They're all losers, they fight. Shaw High School, all they care about is dressing good, stuff like that. They're not interested in school. You know, that was before they had uniforms. It was all about the fashion in Shaw. But you know, I'm sure no one ever believed that someone would actually make it through all those schools and come back and be their judge. But I'm telling you, never quit, never listen to that negativity, and you will, one, have legacy building success, and you too will be a cycle breaker. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm honored